Hello, Modram here. Today I want to showcase you my Poison RF style build for the Druid. I wanted to have something that's melee oriented and that utilizes Poison style gameplay as well as companions. And there is a very nice aspect I have seen that is underutilized. This is the Changeling Depth aspect. This one pops the poison on our enemies, dealing the damage instantaneously, and it multiplies the damage. So if you have a poison duration of 12 seconds, it's dealing the damage instantaneously, and then it is multiplied by this multiplier here. Now, the damage in this instant can crit. So you benefit from critical strike multiplier, which poison otherwise would not be able to benefit from. Sadly, that's nearly all the multipliers we can get on gear. There is one more, the Edge Master. This one is a 20% multiplier based on the primary resource we have available at the time of casting. Now, to pop the poison, we are going to use Pulverize. The whole build also uses a great staff of the Crone, but you can use a two-handed weapon or even a one-hander and an offhand. For the Greaves, I'm going for another more multiplier because we are currently lacking more multipliers. However, you can go with regular boots. It is completely fine. I will go over a max replanner with the Theorycrafted top end and bottom end of this build with a non-unique version, a Crone Pentinent Greaves version, a Tempest Roar version, and one for Andariels Helm. Yes, I have not found the Tempest Roar yet. It's been a gruesome grind and I am really not feeling it anymore. It is really too rare. But I still want to share this one with you. So, the basics of this build are as follows. You pop your Hurricane, you pop your Poison Creeper, you pop your Ravens, and then you Pulverize and you deal a ton of damage. You also have Cataclysm, and Cataclysm has a relatively light cooldown, so it's not 60 seconds, only 38 seconds, and you have nearly 100% uptime on your Hurricane with only 3 seconds of downtime. The cooldowns of your other spells are going to be reset with the Spirit Boon right here, Pack Leader, every time we crit. And we guarantee crits through the Earthen Might keystone. This one can be found at the bottom of the tree, right here. So whenever this one procs, we are guaranteed to crit. Otherwise, I just want to show you the build. So we pop our Hurricane, we run into an enemy pack, and we Pulverize. We also have our Crone Staff, so Claw. Because of the Crone Staff, also procs your Storm Strike. And Storm Strike is then another instance of a lucky hit chance that can proc Earthen Might and can proc the reset on Pack Leader on our abilities. Now, when we have a tougher enemy and we proc all our abilities and then Pulverize and he dodges, well, that was a really bad showcase. It sometimes happens that the enemy, let's see right here, as you can see, the poison gets consumed, but the multiplier is not applied. This is a bug, and this makes this build horrendous to play. And I hope they will fix it, but it happens all the time. But whenever it doesn't happen, the build pops off. Like when we proc everything and just go to town and don't get the seat, like here. We are basically unkillable. We have so much DR, we have so much damage. It is not funny. But if it doesn't, well, let's talk about something else. Like you saw here, a 650k crit with really unoptimized gear. There is so much you can do to improve the damage, to improve the survivability, to improve the overall feel of this build, and we still hit for nearly 1 million. So this is basically what the build is all about. I will finish the lane and talk a bit about what other things you should avoid. For example, CC, heavy CC dungeons are really not that good to run. Frost Enchanted dungeons are really bad. You nearly have 100% uptime on all your stuff, because whenever we run into a pack like this and we pop all our stuff, we are constantly proccing the reset, the 2 seconds reset on our Cataclysm. We deal quite a lot of damage with our claw abilities. No, substantially less damage than just with the poison pop. And as you can see, no idea why this happens. I'm certain this has to do with this modifier here or the suppressed modifier. I'm not entirely sure. But sometimes enemies just eat up the poison pop and are basically not damaged. Really, really bad bug. So one of those mods is basically gimping our build. It is quite nice and quite fun to play otherwise. So I hope they will fix it with the gigantic patch they are currently working on. So this one should be pre-season 1 release, I think. So maybe we will see some stuff to test. Maybe it's just something we can read through. So I'm nearly finished with the dungeon, only a small part is missing. I will finish this one real quick, go to the end boss of this one and showcase boss damage to you. I know this one is 5 level under me, so do not expect massive amounts of damage. Like for example, this massive stack of enemies here right in front of me, we are basically invincible. There is nothing that can deal damage to us. We have so many less damage taking modifiers. But like I said, it's not super high level. So we are now at the boss. We pop our Cataclysm, we pop our Hurricane, we pop our Poison, and we start blasting. Now we deal quite a ton of damage with basically everything we do. There is not much else to say here. Because of Cataclysm, which deals an enormous amount of damage, we are also constantly applying Vulnerable to them. We have 20% less damage taken from Hurricane. We have 20% less damage taken from Pulverize. We have constant uptime on multiple packs through Raven on Vulnerable. And we have Poison Creeper for that juicy, really large poison stack. So this one is the max roll planner. I have one for the Theorycraft, the Druid. This one has at the bottom right here multiple variations. So one for non-unique, one for Crone with Pentinent Greaves, one for the Andariel helmet, one for Tempest Roar plus Crone, and one for Tempest Roar with just the one-hander. So we are going to start with the unique version. So for the unique version, we are going to look first at the Spirit Boons. The Spirit Boons basically never change except for this time. So for this one, we are going for Calamity with Pack Leader in the Wolf cluster. All other builds are going to drop Calamity and go for Masochistic, but we also pick up Swooping Attacks for the Eagle and Wariness for the Deer, as well as Calm Before the Storm. We are constantly proccing through our nature skills, so Claw and our Storm Strike, because both of them are considered nature skills due to the Crone staff. We have a very high lucky hit chance with those abilities, and we are constantly proccing them, so our Storm ultimate cooldown is going to be reduced. And this one is very, very, very nice to have, because Cataclysm has a very high cooldown. Now the lucky hit chance on this one is a duration based one, so if we have 13-second duration on this one, we're going to see a very high lucky hit modifier. However, this one is just based on the duration, not per lightning hit. So the actual lucky hit chance for this one is abysmally small. So first I'm going to go over the aspects and the gear, especially for this version, because this version is a little bit more unique, if you get the pun. So for the weapon, we are going to use the Changing Step. This one goes to up to 300% instantaneous poison release. So you multiply the poison stack damage with this modifier, and this makes it hit very hard. And this one can also crit. So when we get something like crit strike damage, we're going to have another multiplier. The vulnerable damage also helps. We are benefiting from basically every modifier on our gear, which deals a ton of damage. Usually poison does not crit, so this is very, very strong. Now, how do we guarantee our crits? With, of course, Earthen Might. So whenever Earthen Might procs, we are guaranteed crits for 5 seconds. Since we are only using Storm skills and not Earth skills, we need to use the Mighty Storms aspect. So the Mighty Storms aspect will allow us on our Hurricane, on our Cataclysm, and on our Storm Strike to proc Earthen Might. Our other offensive aspects are going to be the Companion one, so the Stampede aspect on our gloves for 1 additional companion. So we are going to have 2 Ravens and 2 Poison Creepers. The Poison Creeper will apply poison, so that's really nice. But most of our damage is going to come from our companion abilities. So we want to boost the damage as much as possible in this version of the build. For our chain, we are going to use Edge Master. Now, Edge Master increases the damage all our skills deal, meaning companion abilities, meaning Hurricane, basically everything we deal, our ultimate ability, by a 30% modifier, up to 30% modifier, based on our primary resource. We basically do not use our primary resource ever, except when we pulverize and pop the poison. So this one is a 30% multiplier to basically all our damage. Then we are going to go with the accelerating aspect, because the accelerating aspect is going to proc on our pulverize, give us a 20% attack speed buff to basically all our actions, which is action speed, and then we basically go blasting. It is a really nice aspect to have on this type of build. Now, you can go for the basic attack speed 1. This will only benefit your Storm Strike. It is higher and easier to obtain at a very good value, but I still prefer the accelerating one for basically all other situations. As for the boots, let's go with the Wind Striker ones. So we crit and we get a movement speed buff. This one stacks for up to 6 seconds, which is nice to have on this build because we are otherwise really slow. Now, we can drop this one for the Pentinent Greaves, don't forget this one, because we get a 10% more multiplier to our poison damage, which is very substantial since it's really hard to scale our poison damage otherwise, and this one just gives us a 10% more multiplier, so really good. That's for the Pentinent Greaves. If you do not have the Pentinent Greaves, go with regular boots. Those give you movement speed, damage reduction while injured, movement speed when killing an elite enemy, and dodge chance. Now, the dodge chance can be exchanged for willpower or intelligence or dexterity depending on what you need on the Paragon board to unlock the rare node modifiers, the boni. For the pants, go for the disobedient one. We've stacked disobedience extremely fast because of Hurricane and the poison and our ravens. So basically all our damage is going to stack disobedience to 100 very fast. For the chest armor, go for as much DR as possible. DR versus poisoned enemies is possible to get on the chest, so do this if you can. It's very nice to have. Whenever we poison creeper, we get less damage taken. As for the aspect, we go for the protector aspect. The protector aspect gives us a barrier, which is very strong, especially when you can craft it. The crafted one has a high value. This is usually not the case whenever you just drop the aspect. If you do drop the aspect, it's usually a little bit less, I think 30% less. It's currently buggy, so the Codex one is superior to the one you can find. And as for the helmet, go for the Might aspect. Now the Might aspect gives our basic abilities another 20% damage reduction for up to 6 seconds. The one you can craft is only for 2 seconds, but we attack all the time with our basic ability, with our Storm Strike, so it's not much of a problem. Now the stats basically on all the gear you can get is basically the same. So you get ranks on Poison Creeper on the helmet, ranks of Ravens on the helmet, cooldown reduction, life on kill. Then you have DR and total armor on your chest and your pants. You can get movement speed on kill, damage reduction on your boots, and what I already mentioned, the willpower, dodge chance against distant enemies, or intelligence, depending on what you need. And then for the gloves, you go for attack speed, critical strike chance, and lucky hit chance. This is extremely important that your gloves have all of those stats. The Storm skill cooldown reduction you can grab on your gloves is substantial, but not mandatory for this build. You can grab enough cooldown just from your helmet and your amulet. Now, speaking of the amulet, go for cooldown reduction, movement speed, passive ranks to envenom, ranks to all companion skills. Since most of our damage is going to come from poison and crit, as well as our companion abilities, we want to boost all of those. And for the rings, go for maximum life, crit strike chance, vulnerable damage, crit strike damage. This is basically true for both rings. So basically copy those. So let's go over the skill tree next. We pick up Storm Strike with the Fierce Storm Strike here. So this one is for vulnerable uptime. We then pick up Pulverize. Pulverize is used to pop our poison with the Changing Depths aspect. We then pick up Primal Pulverize because the Primal Pulverize will give us a 20% reduced damage to enemies hit by it. So those enemies will deal less damage. So that's very nice. Then we pick up Predatory Instinct as well as Iron Fur for a damage reduction buff whenever we use Pulverize. We can also grab 3 points in Instinct because we get 6% increased crit strike chance versus close enemies. We are basically always close. So this one is basically a 6% increase to crit strike chance. And then we basically skip this tree. There is nothing of value here. So for the next tree, we're going to put as many points into Poison Creeper as possible to boost the poison damage of this one. We go for Ferocious Poison Creeper for a 3-second duration increase. This is basically a more multiplier. It doubles the damage the Poison Creeper deals. We then go for Ravens. Ravens can go for Ferocious Ravens, which give us vulnerable uptime. So 3 seconds whenever we cast this one. And we are going to grab Call of the Wild, which is another 30% more multiplier to the damage of our companions. Now this will be quite substantial damage for the character. Most of our damage will come through those nodes. Then next we're going to pick up Hurricane 5 points here. We also get Savage Hurricane for less damage taken from enemies affected by it. And we also get to slow enemies. Next we are going to get Elemental Exposure at 3 points, Endless Tempest at 3 points, because this one increases the duration of our Hurricane, and Cataclysm, so the ultimate right here. And we pick up Bad Omen. All the damage we deal versus vulnerable, immobilized or stunned targets will send down a lightning bolt. So this one is really strong on this build because we have a lot of hits, we have a lot of lucky hit chance, and we have a lot of vulnerable uptime as well as immobilized uptime. So this one is substantial damage. In the next passive cluster we want to pick up Neurotoxin and 3 points in Envenom to a more multiplier to our crit damage. This basically multiplies the critical strike damage we have. So 1000 becomes 1600 crit strike damage. Currently we cannot apply Toxic Claws. So this one would be better, especially for a poison build that uses the pop mechanic, but we cannot pick this one because we cannot apply this one without the Tempest Roar, with our Hurricane, Cataclysm, as well as our Storm Strike. So no point here. And then we pick up Cataclysm, 3 points here. We get vulnerable uptime, and then we pick up Unrestrained. Unrestrained reduces the duration of crowd controlling impairing effects. This one is really nice to have on this build because we do not have any unstoppable souls. And then we pick up Earthly Might. So this sums up the skill tree of this build, of the basically non-unique version. The unique versions will see massive changes to this one, so keep that in mind. So for the Paragon board, we are looking at basically the same Paragon board for every single variation of this build. So every step looks at the same board. Just one glyph is different, this one here, for the first one and the second one. So basically the non-unique version and the Crone version, this one is going to use the companion glyph, the Wilds glyph. But the Andariel, the Tempest Roar and the Tempest Roar one hand are going to use the Poison glyph, the Bane glyph, right in this spot, so in the Inner Beast board. For the starter board, we're going to pick up the Vulnerable glyph. This one is the Exploit one. This one gives us access to Vulnerable on every single damage tick we deal when we start the fight. We are also getting a more multiplier because vulnerable damage is going to multiply our damage. This is also true for poison damage. So vulnerable damage increases the damage enemies take by a ton. So the next board is the Constricting Tendrils one. For this one, we path through here to grab the Tracker glyph. The Tracker glyph is based on dexterity and increases the poison duration by 33%, which is a more multiplier for this specific build because we are popping the poison. And it increases the damage to poisoned enemies. Now for this one applies to the damage pop, meaning we benefit through the damage to poisoned enemies on this specific build whenever we pop the poison. Next up, we're going to path through here to grab the Constricting Tendrils node, because we get a lucky hit chance to poison enemies for a ton of damage. Next, we're going to unlock boards. First on the left side, so this one is the Inner Beast board. And then we path through here to unlock the Thunderstruck board. This has to do with the nodes right here. Those nodes need specific dexterity and intelligence values that need to be met to benefit through the Keeper node. The Keeper node increases the poison damage we deal and the damage our companions deal by 10%. However, after we pick this glyph, we are going to turn back here and pick up all those nodes here to get the Wilds glyph. The Wilds glyph cluster will give us a ton of armor, a ton of damage based on our companion skill damage, or the poison damage. When we exchange this one for the poison one, that's the Bane one, we get basically 100% poison damage. Now, the poison damage can then deal double damage. This one is especially good for Andariel and the Tempest Roar because we apply a ton of poison, just not through our Poison Creeper anymore. But for the non-unique version and the Crone version, we are going to use this node, the Wilds node. We then path through here and unlock the Heightened Malice node for a more damage multiplier. And then we path up here to unlock the Ancestral Guidance node. The Ancestral Guidance node will then again increase our damage for 5 seconds after we spend 75 spirit. So when we pulverize with this one to pop the poison, we are then stacking up a buff, and this buff resets at 75, and then we deal a ton more damage. And to finish up the build, we are going to path through here, get the Thunderstruck node, this one is just a bonus, and get the Tempest nodes here. So those get us a ton of crit strike damage, a ton of vulnerable damage with a more multiplier, and on the way we also get a ton of crit damage here. All of those are unconditional. It's a very simple board and I don't want to talk too much about it. There's a few nodes like superiority here that deal damage to crowd-controlled enemies. We get a little bit of maximum life. We pick up stuff like tenacity at the end, and that's about it. So everything else is basically very straightforward in this type of board. Next, I'm going to go over the Crone and Pentinent Greaves equipment build. Now this one uses the great staff of the Crone instead of a regular rare or legendary weapon. This means the aspect we are currently not using here needs to move to the amulet, meaning the Changeling Steps aspect is going to be on the amulet here. The Edge Masters aspect is going to go on the gloves. So we are going to lose the companion aspect, the Stampede aspect here. This is not that big of a deal because we are going to proc our pack leader aspect much more often with the great staff of the Crone, meaning we are basically applying more poison through the Poison Creeper, which is a massive benefit to this build. Everything else stays the same. What is the difference between the non-unique version and this version? This version is more consistent in dealing damage. It feels a little bit nicer, it feels a little bit more interactive, it feels a little bit faster. However, the skill tree sees some changes. Now, because we are going to use the Crone staff, we cannot use those nodes here. The Unrestrained node has to go. We're going to pick 1 point in Toxic Claw because we're going to use Claw, so we can apply poison through the basic attack, which increases our damage by a lot in single target situations. Then we drop 1 point in Raven and 2 points in Predatory Instinct to grab Claw, Enhanced Claw and Wild Claw, as well as 5 points in Storm Strike. The damage is going to be much more consistent through this. Next, I'm going to go over the Andariels version. I know Andariel is basically Unobtainium, but let's go over it just to highlight the changes and highlight what is currently possibly the best poison build in the game, but no one can play it. First, the skill tree. The skill tree is basically the same, so there is no changes here. For the Paragonboard, we're going to use the Poison Glyph, the Bane Glyph, instead of the companion Wild one. And for the equipment, we're going to see a few changes. This is also true for the affixes. So we're going to use Andariels Visage. This one has a lucky hit chance to proc a Poison Nova with a ton of base damage. So we want to have as much lucky hit chance on our gear as possible. This means we prefer the lucky hit chance roll on our gloves. We prefer the lucky hit chance on our rings. That's 2 times right here and here. We drop the crit strike damage for this one, and we pick up as much attack speed as possible. So we are going to drop Urban Might in favor of more basic skill attack speed. Everything else is going to stay the same, except for one thing in the talent tree. Now the talent tree is going to pick up Urza's Strength instead of the Urban Might passive, because we do not have Urban Might on our ring anymore. This one will give us 20% additional maximum life while in verbal form, so whenever we pulverize and 3 seconds afterwards. But we are also gaining, while healthy, we deal 30% more damage. 30% more damage is multiplicative with everything else here. This one is extremely good on this build. We are basically sacrificing crit strike chance for a ton more chances to proc the Poison Nova of this one. However, this build is Unobtainium, so let's move on to the Tempest Roar one, which is also not obtainable for me, but for you. So this one has basically the same tree as the Crone version. There is just one change. We pick up a ton of points in Toxic Claws. For this one, we are sacrificing a few points in Ravens, so 2 to be specific. The Paragonboard is the same, just with the Poison Bane Glyph here. Now, as for the equipment, we go for the Tempest Roar helmet. Then we go for the Mad Wolf's Glee, which gives us 3 ranks to all werewolf skills. The poison damage is based on the base damage of our skills, meaning the more ranks we have, the higher the base damage of the skills. So we go for as many ranks as possible. And at max rank, this one, currently in-game, is giving us 3 ranks to werewolf skills. So this one is very, very strong. Then we have our gloves. The gloves get 2 ranks to shapeshifting skills whenever we hurricane. So whenever Hurricane is active, which then buffs the base damage of our Hurricane and basically all our other spells. For the pants, we sacrifice 1 damage reduction in favor of ranks to Hurricane to boost the damage of our Hurricane even further, because this one, like I said, this one is benefiting through Toxic Claws. Toxic Claws are giving us 45% base damage as poison damage over 4 seconds. So as far as I'm aware, Hurricane can crit as a tick, and the tick is still benefiting through Toxic Claws, meaning Hurricane can stack up poison really fast and at a very high value. That's why we want to boost the Hurricane base damage as much as possible. This means for our amulets, since we are losing the helmet slot for the cooldown reduction and we want as much uptime on Hurricane as possible, as well as much uptime on Cataclysm as possible, we're going to sacrifice something for cooldown reduction, Storm Skill cooldown reduction. And this one is going to be the Companion ranks. And the Envenom ranks are going to be exchanged for the Toxic Claw passive. So if you're going to run this build, you're going to need a completely new amulet. As for the rings, we're going to go with the crit damage ones, not with the lucky hit damage ones. So that's basically all you need to know about the Tempest Roar one. However, there is another version, the one-handed one. This has to do with the uptime on our Hurricane and our Cataclysm, which can be improved through a totem. This totem can improve our critical strike chance. This one can give us damage reduction, give us cooldown reduction, give us lucky hit chance. And we also get vulnerable damage, willpower, damage to close enemies, critical strike damage on our weapon with another basic attack speed increase. And we can fit Edgemaster now on our build. So we have some benefits because we do not use a Crone staff. However, the build will suffer inconsistency because we are not using Claw to proc our lucky hits. So I'm not sure which one is going to be better. This would require testing with a Tempest Roar, which I do not have. So it's only a theoretical explanation to the build. Now, and as mentioned before, all builds are using Masochistic except the non-unique version, because the non-unique version is not going to use any werewolf skills and any, well, we have Pulverize, but basically it is nearly completely useless. Now this sums up my theory crafting video on poison builds for the Druid. I will share the talent planner down below, so please take a look at this one, because I'm currently not going to drop the Tempest Roar. I am farming like crazy. I have finished like 100 slums, and I'm sick of those dudes completely wrecking my day with Chain CC. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this video. See you next time, and bye.